Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. When I was 13, my mom and dad got a divorce. I could tell it was coming because I had friends whose parents got divorced too. They told me what was happening in their home, and I saw that it was the same with my family. At the time, I was scared and sad that the same would happen to my mom and dad. I didn't want to be without any of my parents. But as I grew older, I realized that it was the best thing for us. My dad was toxic and wasn't an excellent example of a father. He would manipulate my mom into giving him her salary and even bonuses. He would not return home for weeks, and whenever he did, there was no peace. At some point, I began to prefer it when he wasn't home because I had become afraid of him. This happened for years until my mom explained that she and daddy needed a break, so we would leave our home. I knew exactly what that meant, and it also took my mom everything to take that step. She had lived in misery with my dad for years, and many times I overheard her crying and speaking to her best friend over the phone. Listening to her responses, I knew her friend was asking her to leave my dad, but she always said she still loved him and worried about me. Luckily for us, my mom had a house that she inherited from her dad, so we moved there. That house was one of the reasons my mom and dad always got into fights. He wanted her to sell it, but she refused, most likely because she knew that was her escape, and if she sold it, he would take the money away. The house was in her name, so he couldn't do anything about it. My mom and I had planned to move out on those times when my dad would leave and not return for weeks. My mom knew his patterns, so she could tell when he wouldn't be back for a while, usually when he had collected her money. My mom's best friend came to help us move out of our home. It was sad, but I knew that it was needed. I knew my dad wasn't nice and maltreated my mom, so if leaving him meant the only person who showed that they cared for me was safe, I was okay with it. Over the next few months after we left our former house, my mom filed for divorce and also got full custody of me. My dad was mandated to pay for child support. It was a relief because he could no longer take my mom's money. Instead, he had to pay her. Slowly, my mom started to be herself again. She was smiling more and was present for most of my school activities. My mom met my stepdad at a gym, and he was a lovely person. Even before they married, he treated my mom like a queen, which I loved. He would call me his princess. He was more than my dad ever was to me. The only issue was that he had a daughter and we didn't get along. She was older than me and thought I was stealing her father from her. Surprisingly, she was nice to my mom, but not to me. My mom explained that Lisa, my stepsister, and I went through something similar, except it was her mom. That made me understand why she would accept my mom but think I was taking her father away. I decided that I would love her until she could love me back. It's been many years now, and that still hasn't happened. So I've come to terms with it. I dated very intentionally because I wanted to marry a man like my stepdad, not my biological father. As I dated different men, I figured out how to catch those red flags before we got in too deep. I didn't want to make a mistake in my marriage and spend the rest of my life regretting it. I did a fine job because my fiance is all I ever imagined and wished for. He was caring and attentive. He was confident and not threatened by the fact that I was making waves in my career. Above all, he loved God, which is the most important for me. We got engaged 9 months ago and our wedding is in 2 days. I'm so excited. I can't wait to start a life with him and have his cute babies. I plus him equals fine. My stepsister still hates me, but now she tries to hide it when everyone is around. She thinks she is in a race with me and tries to do everything better than me. Whenever I hit a milestone, she would make a sly comment or try to turn the attention away from me. By now, everyone knows this, so they stay out of the way. She was so jealous that I was going to be married before her, though she pretended to be happy for me. She opted to be involved in my wedding planning. I wanted to refuse, but my mom and fiance asked me to give her a chance. I overheard her telling my mom that she had ordered a wonderful cake as a wedding gift for me. She said since I was in love with France, where I was traveling for my honeymoon, she had made a French-style cake with French cookies. She had planned with the event planner to surprise me with a slice as part of her speech at the reception. My mom seemed so excited that she thought of getting me a gift. I immediately knew that that was not a gift, but her ploy to turn my wedding into a disaster. I have severe almond allergies, and I landed in the hospital the last time there was cross-contamination. Because of this, I don't eat desserts that my immediate family member or I didn't order. I can't trust anyone else to remember it. Notice how she coined her sentences to seem so innocent and harmless. With the whole French-style cake and French cookies, who doesn't know that French cookies are macaroons and contained almond flour? This is why she didn't mention the word macaroons, else my mom would have picked it immediately. My mom was unsuspecting because she knew my stepsister was very aware of my allergies, so she didn't expect her to purposefully order something that would harm me. She even went a step further to make it look like a sweet gesture so that I get served something poisonous to my body during her speech. The worst part is that she had also planned her escape by telling my mom. If anything happened to me, she would say she told my mom. My mom approved of it and she didn't realize macaroons were made with almond flour. I will confront her at our rehearsal dinner today. I can't wait to see her face when I finish my plan. The rehearsal dinner was excellent. When it was time for the toast, I got everyone's attention and asked for a slice of cake for my stepsister. She seemed a little nervous, and rightly so. I told everyone that I always wanted to have a sibling, and when my stepdad and mom got together, one of the first questions I asked was if he had a child I could play with. I was so excited to hear that he had a daughter, and she was older than me. I thought I had found someone I could look up to. I was surprised that she wasn't as excited to see me when we met. I thought her attitude would wear off because my mom told me she needed more time to adjust. I waited for her, but she never came along. At this time, my fiancé was looking at me, trying to stop me or figure out what I was doing. I continued telling everyone that I wished things were different. I wished my stepsister didn't see me as a competition. I wish she would love me, and even now I still do. I told everyone that my stepsister, who was supposed to look out for me, planned to harm me on my wedding day. She was the only culprit because everyone else she had planned with was unsuspecting. I told them I overheard her telling my mom she would get me a cake for my wedding as a gift. My mom was so excited, of course, because it was a miracle coming from her. She didn't realize that by French cookies, she meant macaroons, which I couldn't eat. My stepsister is very much aware that I am allergic to almonds and a few other nuts. If there was something my stepsister couldn't do, was to lie. She wasn't good at it, so she couldn't deny that I was not speaking the truth. Our dad was so disappointed that he expressed it openly. He told her that he had warned her severely to change her mind towards me. He said he could not recognize the sweet little girl he had raised. I told her I was done waiting for her to come around, so she wasn't invited to my wedding or anything related to me. As far as I was concerned, I didn't have a sister. There was an uproar. It was a disaster because everyone was talking at the same time. My fiance came to calm me down. He knew that what I had just done was very hard for me because I wasn't the person to cut people off. My family tried to change my mind, but I was resolute. What was done was done. I knew this broke my stepdad's heart, but he would have to overcome it. For so many years, I had waited for her to see me as her sister, not her enemy, and now I was done. My stepsister walked out on everyone without an apology. Not like I expected one. Good riddance. NTA, your sister needs to see a therapist. She is probably dealing with damages from her childhood. It's good that you ban her from your wedding and anything that concerns you until she comes back to her senses. You still have to be extra careful in case she tries to do something to hurt you again. NTA, your mom was careless. She was blinded by her need to have your stepsister love you. She should have known that French cookies were macaroons, especially if your stepsister has never been thoughtful towards you before. Your mom should have suspected something because people don't change overnight. YTA. You could have been more patient and used the opportunity at the rehearsal dinner to let her know that you love her unconditionally. You had a chance to win her, but you chose something else. I believe that you can still make it right if you wish. My wife, Taylor, and I got married a little over 2 years ago. It was supposed to be a beautiful day and was something she had dreamed of her whole life. But unfortunately, during the reception, a family friend, Ken, intentionally spilled food and a drink on her dress, which obviously devastated Taylor. This was pretty early in the reception, and there was no way to get it out. So the night was ruined for her, and Taylor struggled greatly to move past this. Obviously, Ken was thrown out of the venue, and we did bring him to the court for damage. He opted to just pay without going through with the court date and has flat out admitted he did it on purpose. His reasoning was he had a thing for my mom, was wasted, and thought that would impress her. Apparently, my mom, unbeknownst to us, was angry because Taylor told people we were engaged at my mom's milestone birthday party, and my mom told Ken that, and he got this brilliant idea to woo her. Anyway, my mom initially sided with us, but later began dating Ken and told us to get over it. I told her it was us or him, and she picked him. I lost my mom and both of my sisters over this guy, and Taylor lost out on her dream wedding. I haven't seen my mom since, but I did know through family that she and Ken were getting married. I tried to keep this from Taylor as it would hurt her, but she found out. Recently, my cousin, Emily, came over. Emily is the only family I have left due to Ken, so I do value the relationship. Emily mentioned how she had spent the weekend in a nearby vacation town for my mom's wedding and was just saying how much she liked the town. But Taylor snapped at her and said she didn't want to hear anything about my mom's wedding. Emily said she understood. About 20 minutes later, Taylor asked if she wanted to stay for dinner, and Emily said she couldn't as she has my mom's dogs at the moment. So obviously she is on her honeymoon. Taylor lost it and said Emily can't be this stupid and must be trying to hurt her for some reason. She began to get emotional and said that her wedding was stolen and she doesn't want to hear anything about my mom being happy or having a wedding. I gave her a hug and tried to calm her down. She told me to make Emily leave, and I said that didn't seem fair as it was probably a mistake. Emily said she said not to talk about the wedding and she didn't realize she couldn't even talk about the dogs. Taylor asked if I was really going to not do anything, and I said I didn't feel right kicking Emily out. Emily left on her own, but Taylor ended up in tears and was angry with me. NTA, but your wife needs a do-over wedding moment. Having something spilled on her dress isn't the worst thing that can happen, but for her, her dream was broken and she needs to experience her new dream. Ask her what her new dream is and start planning for it. Planning to experience her new dream can be really healing. Maybe she would like a trip somewhere in a white dress and a photographer to capture her on the beach or in a garden, whatever she wants. Your wife still has justifiable issues regarding your mom and Ken related to the deliberate act of petty cruelty that ruined her night. Because of their refusal to apologize, it remains an open sore under the scab. She is not going to be okay with people who obviously still support and have a relationship with your mom and Ken. People telling her to get over it already are cruel. But it sounds like she could use help processing the event so it doesn't continue to dominate her emotional health. It obviously was a bigger issue to her than maybe you realize. You did the right thing backing your wife. If you want a relationship with Emily, it should be without your wife's involvement. But those having a relationship with Ken and your mom are silently supporting what they did. So get your wife's thoughts on this. Really, ESH. My ex and I, 44 female, divorced when our daughters, Stacy, 17 female, and Emily, 14 female, were young. About a year after the divorce, he passed away. My ex was paying child support, but that stopped the day he died. The girls inherited their father's estate, but since he was fresh into his career, it wasn't much. Things could have been rough as a single mother, but his brothers stepped into his shoes. They took the girls on the weekends and basically bought the girls anything they needed, from clothing to school supplies, and bought our groceries. They also indulged the girls' every whim. Stacy loved horses when she was little, so Uncle John paid for her lessons and riding fees. Emily thought she wanted to play the piano, so Uncle Jeff paid for her lessons and bought her a piano. When the girls grew out of those phases and got interested in something else, their uncles were there ready to indulge them. I tried talking to the uncles about not spoiling my girls, but they said that their nieces needed to explore their own interests, and those explorations will help their brains develop. I disagree, but was not in a financial situation to push too hard because they were paying so much for the girls. I was basically responsible for only the rent. I later remarried a wonderful man who brought 2 kids into the family. We had 1 more kid together, and things are good for the most part. However, kids are smart, so my daughter's step and half siblings started to notice their sisters having more experiences and things than they do. My husband didn't like the situation. We had some arguments about it over the years. Things came to a boiling point recently when we were discussing how to pay for our 2 oldest kids' colleges, Stacy and her stepbrother, Rick, 18, male. Both are good students, and while they haven't gotten their acceptance letters, I have no doubt they'll get into good schools. My husband and I make enough money to live a middle-class lifestyle with 5 kids, but not enough to put them through college. The reality is that they'll have to take out school loans. We talked to both of them about loans, and this is when I found out Stacy had already talked to her uncles, and they're paying for her tuition and cost of living wherever she wants to go. This floored us and made my husband extremely mad. He got red and started to scream how it's not fair Stacy and Emily will get to go to expensive colleges and graduate with no loans, while our other kids will have to go to state schools and take out loans. He wanted me to call John and Jeff to tell them to stop spoiling the girls. On one hand, I agree 100% with my husband that it's not fair to my other kids, but on the other hand, I can't hold my daughters back from something so wonderful. In the end, I told my husband I'm not going to tell my ex-brother-in-laws to stop spoiling our daughters. Was I wrong to tell him that? Thank you all for reading my post and answering my question. Things have gone downhill and I'm now crushed. I was at work, and without my knowledge, my husband called John and yelled at him to mind his own business. Told him we don't want their money and to stay out of our lives. My husband then went and yelled at the girls as they packed their bags, and as they were leaving for their uncles. When I got home, my husband wanted to call the police to report them as runaways, but I talked him out of it. I went over to John's house and his wife led me to the kitchen where we stood in silence, watching John holding my girls while they cried. For a minute, I pictured their father holding them. Stacy and Emily refused to talk to me when they walked past me on their way upstairs to their room. John and I had a long conversation about the whole situation. He basically told me he's doing what his brother couldn't, and both me and my husband can go to hell if we don't like it. He said the girls should stay with him and his family until things calm down, and I agreed. So this is where we are for now. NTA, it's not fair. It's not fair that a grown man is having a temper tantrum. It's not fair he's putting this on you. But most of all, it's not fair that he sees the girls as having luxury when really it's compensating for the loss of their father. I'm sure you'd all trade that money in a heartbeat to bring him back. YTA for marrying a grown man who has meltdowns because he's jealous of your kids. Are we really supposed to believe he's been treating them well all this time? I'd say grow a spine, but at their age, it doesn't matter. Plan on your kids going LC with you once they're in college.